Hey everybody, welcome to Cowboy Criminology. Of course, I'm your host, the Cowboy Criminologist, Derek Judd. Hope everybody had a good Memorial Day weekend. Uh, couple things kind of happened over the weekend. My symptoms were acting up, so pretty much everything from my clavicle up was hurting. So it was really hard for me to kind of relax and enjoy the weekend. But this Memorial Day kind of hit me a little harder than it has in the past. I got to thinking about some friends of mine that I made while I was in the Marines and how they're no longer with us. And I got to thinking about their families. Some of them have families of their own, and for whatever reason, Memorial Day just kind of hit me really hard. So if you if you have if you have people in the that you know and love and they're in the military, be sure to let them know how much you love and care about them. And for any of you veterans out there, uh, I don't have to tell you what Memorial Day means. So anyway, we've been talking. Cowboy Criminology kind of exploded, at least for a small channel, because up until about a month ago, we had less than 100 subscribers. And right now we're sitting at 162 subscribers. And I can credit two videos with the growth over the last month, and that has to do with the Sandra Dorley case that we've been talking about. Now, Sandra Dorley is the New York Monroe County prosecutor who decided that the law didn't apply to her. When an officer tried to effect a traffic stop, she kept going, got on the phone with his chief. Uh, so many things wrong with that. And I believe it was Tom sent me a deal wanting a response about how it seems like, well, there was a special prosecutor, which happens anytime a high ranking official in a jurisdiction is charged. Most of the time, a special prosecutor is brought in so that there's no conflict of interest there, which is a very smart thing to do. Really, it's the only thing to do. But this investigator, or this special prosecutor, said, she's paid her fine. I don't really see anything in the video that rises to the level of criminal misconduct. I don't know. I've watched the video several times, and I'm not even a police officer in New York, but I do know how to read statutes. And yeah, she did. And so this whole, let's just shake hands and let bygones be bygones. That's not that's not fair and impartial enforcement of the law. Okay. That is, you're covering for somebody. Now, I've expressed a lot of displeasure with the rank of the Webster Police Department, specifically that lieutenant and the chief. The lieutenant, who was actually on scene, uh, just kind of standing there talking to the district attorney, and not not either going away and saying, you should have stopped. Shame on you. If you want to file a complaint, we'll do it later. Chief, the exact same thing, except he never showed up, but he put out the only statement that he really could. And the statement was something: we're very proud of how this officer handled a very difficult situation. Well, you had to say that. You had to say that because people already suspect that you were trying to affect some kind of influence over the traffic stop, because she called twice during the traffic stop, and instead of both times saying, pull over and let the officer handle the traffic stop, and we'll investigate if we need to. That didn't happen. Um, so the special prosecutor, the Webster Police Department rank, they all seem to want to have a hands off attitude about this. And in the article that I was reading, I believe is from the Rochester Beacon, the Rochester Democrat, one of those two. Uh, I read the editorial about it, and even the police union out there, which is interesting because I have never seen a police unit or a union where you couldn't look up who the elected officials of that union were, and I wasn't able to find any information about who that was. But even the police union has the back of Sandra Dorley saying, well, yeah, everybody's entitled to a bad day, and what she did was wrong, but you know what? She paid her ticket, and this whole thing has just been blown out of proportion, and everybody just needs to let it go. The problem with that is everybody's not blowing this out of proportion. You're not taking it seriously enough. And I'll tell you what, it'll be a cold day in hell where I'd let any officer working under me give their money to a union that's not going to have their back. This is ridiculous. This kind of misconduct is supposed to give muscle to individual officers when they're getting railroaded, which, let's face it, Officer Crisafulli, he's absolutely getting railroaded in this. Now, everybody wants to sit there and say, well, she apologized, and, the chief hailed him for his professionalism and everything. No, that's not enough. There's still no accountability on the part of Sandra Dorley. And when you're watching this, you're seeing the whole rules for thee and not for me kind of mentality. And that's kind of it's a double-edged sword, slippery slope kind of thing. Because I promise you, what some people will see as discretion, other people will see as favoritism, or doing favors, or knuckling under, not doing your job. I've done thousands of traffic stops in my career, all right? And one of the things I was always afraid of was somebody fighting a ticket in court and then turning around, writing a subpoena for traffic stops I had made that day, and seeing when I gave breaks to people who maybe they were going a little slower, maybe they were going a little faster. All right. But there's always a reason why an officer chooses to give discretion. Obviously, if your entire job revolves around traffic enforcement, you can't just stop people, give them a lecture, and send them on their way. You can't do that. Especially in a small jurisdiction, the town revenue requires that you write so many citations in order to make it viable, like for you to have a job. Now, Texas got away in 2000. There was a speed trap law that was passed, and basically it said that a jurisdiction under 100,000 people, I think it was. It's been a while since I've had to look at the statute, but the statute says that a jurisdiction under that can only use 30% of the revenue, or can only keep 30% of the revenue that they keep for traffic tickets. The rest has to go to the state, to go into the state general fund. And so, okay, you figure $200 a citation, averaging about 50 traffic stops, 50 ticketed traffic stops or infractions a week. That's a pretty good amount. All right, but there's no secret sauce for I've seen a lot of YouTube videos where police officers are like, oh, hey, if you want to get out of a ticket, this is what you have to do. No, it doesn't work that way. I know some officers who rarely enforce speeding, but whenever they see somebody go through a stop sign without stopping, they harp on that and they have zero tolerance for it. And a lot of it has to do with what the experiences are. Some officers early in their career, maybe they worked a really bad traffic accident where somebody blew through a stop sign, caused a major accident, maybe a fatality, something like that. And that just became something that they weren't going to let go. a lot of different things affect whether or not you will or will not get a ticket. All right. And I think that's a different video for a different time, but there's no guarantees. Like when I started the beginning of my week, I always pushed really hard to write to hit that magic 50. That was my number in order to what I call play. And when I was playing, what I was looking for is I wasn't looking for vehicles that were speeding, although I got my fair share of those. But what I was looking for is I was looking to do criminal interdiction. And so I was looking for vehicles specifically that I believed were tied with trafficking humans or trafficking contraband. And that was a chance for me to really hone my interdiction skills and my roadside interview and interrogation skills. And because of the way I set up my week and everything, I was able to spend more time on those stops. Got really comfortable with getting consent to search vehicles. I really kind of had a first class education because I learned by doing. And I never found anything exciting. I never had the career bust. I did have a couple of cases that I thought started off looking really good for human trafficking, but they fell apart after I talked to the other people in the vehicle. But it's part of doing that due diligence and knowing what to look for and realizing when things aren't adding up, and more importantly, being able to tell people why those aren't adding up. All right. So the problem that I see in a lot of these jurisdictions, especially in a high profile case like Sandra Dorley, is now she has set a precedent. She has set a standard. People don't have to stop. And it's okay if they stop at their house because you know what? The district attorney did it. And all I have to say is, oh, I was having a bad day. Just write me my ticket and get out of here. I'll pay it and we can all move on. Well, a lot of you have pointed out that Sandra Dorley took a bag from the vehicle and placed it inside the residence. And then instead of shutting her door or telling him to leave, what'd she do? She put the bag in and she came right back out and started talking. That's distancing language. All right. Are there confidential files in there that are not meant for everybody's eyes? Yeah, probably. She's the district attorney. I would think that's reasonable. But from what I know about interdiction is when somebody is trying to get away from the vehicle or get something out of the vehicle, that's something that really should make an officer's situational awareness, make that antenna perk up a little bit. And so we may never know. We don't know if she was drunk. She admitted to being on medication, chemotherapy. I know in some of the things I read that she's a cancer survivor, and maybe those are just continuing to put her cancer into remission or whatever. But something is off. We've talked about her behavior during the traffic stop. We've talked about her demeanor during the traffic stop. I even watched the behavioral panel, and I got to say I'm kind of proud of myself that my view of Sandra Dorley's behavior and her mannerisms and the way she was speaking, her body language was in line with what the behavioral panel said, and that kind of makes me feel pretty good. It's nice when your opinions are validated by people with a higher level of professional credentials than what you have. But along with all of that, it's going to be very hard for the police department to do their job because what they're seeing right now is Sandra Dorley flaunting the law, the police union saying, yeah, it happened. We need to move on. It's not really that big a deal. Everybody's making a big deal about this. Let's just move on. Let's forget it ever happened. We don't want to overlook her stellar career as a prosecutor over the last 30 years. Even though this woman has been embattled since she was elected. This is not the first time she has been called on to resign. And matter of fact, it's happened at least 2 other times since since she has been the district attorney. So now it's going to come down to Governor Hochul, Lord help us, conducting an investigation into prosecutorial misconduct. Well, if you've been paying attention to what some other high profile prosecutors are doing up in that part of the country, I can't say I have a lot of faith in her doing the right thing. Kathy Hochul has managed to drop the ball every time law enforcement has been involved. If it gave a break to a criminal, Kathy Hochul bent over to make sure that that criminal got that. Same with Alvin Bragg. But I also see this as Kathy Hochul having a real opportunity. Kathy Hochul has a chance to really hold Sandra Dorley accountable for her actions. And whether that's a 6-month suspension, whether that's making her step down completely, which I really feel is the only thing to do to enhance any public trust in the prosecutor's office. So I think she has an opportunity, if she doesn't blow it, by showing people that you are responsible for the decisions you make. And failing to comply with lawful orders of law enforcement can lead to you being arrested. They can lead to you facing criminal charges. They can lead to you losing your job. Okay? We always talk about how police officers need to hold themselves to a higher standard, and I absolutely believe that. I don't want to serve with police officers who act just like the knuckleheads on the street. I expect these guys to have a higher level of training, a higher level of education. I expect them to be more professional. I expect them to have a thicker skin. And I expect them to handle every situation at the lowest possible level. And one of the greatest tools for for people management that I learned was when I was working for the Texas Department of Criminal Justice. Sometimes it doesn't mean you get louder; it means you get quieter. And I have used get quiet instead of get loud to my advantage on a number of occasions. And so I don't necessarily think that it's a lack of law enforcement training that's the issue. But I've been saying for quite a while, and if you've been following me since the video I put out about NYPD reconsidering beards and watch caps and polo shirts and all of these things, trying to make the officers more comfortable, relaxing tattoo regulations. That's not the problem. The problem is good officers seem to be stuck between bad supervisors, bad administration, and bad officers. And even when people seem to understand that there's an issue within the department, nobody wants to do the right thing to protect the department, to protect the rest of the good officers. But I'll tell you right now, if I was a sergeant, a lieutenant, a captain for the Webster PD right now, my officers, there would absolutely be no way they were doing traffic stops. Not for anything. We'll go and work the accident later. But no, we're not working traffic accidents because the prosecuting attorney doesn't have to comply with law enforcement. We can't really expect other people to comply. And I made the comment in one of my videos that a lot of people who have a sense of entitlement, they have some title, some position, something that makes them think that they're immune to these type of things. Okay? And the problem with that is that you get enough of those people together and they start covering for each other. Well, The Sandra Dorley case, I said, is the tip of the iceberg because this is not an uncommon problem in law enforcement. But it is a problem that's driving good officers out of law enforcement. Because why put up with the stress, with the danger, to protect people who don't deserve to be protected? And I'm not talking about the law-abiding citizens. I'm talking about people who think that they're too special for the law to apply to them. Because how do you sit there and how do you do those small enforcement actions? Parking tickets, traffic tickets, writing tickets for accidents, writing tickets for loitering, disturbing the peace, drunk and disorderly. How do you enforce those small things when you can't even get the people who are supposed to uphold those standards, who are supposed to be pillars of the community? How are you supposed to enforce that? You can't. And so really the only thing that you can do is say, well, why didn't you write the ticket on this? If I can't do it to the prosecuting attorney, I certainly can't do it to this person. And a lot of people think that's flippant, but I promise you, if more officers develop that mentality where when they see those double standards and they refuse to act on them, it's going to change things around. But let me share a video with you just to show you that this is not just something going on in New York or California. It's happening everywhere, but I think people need to be more aware of what is happening, why it's happening, why is it being allowed to happen. Now, this case that I'm going to share with you comes out of Maricopa, Arizona, and it has to do with not only prosecutorial misconduct but judicial misconduct. And you can see some stark similarities between the Maricopa case and the Monroe County case, beyond the fact that they both start with M and end with the vowel. But if you look at it, it seems like there's a reluctance to hold people accountable. So I'm going to share the story with you, and then I'll come back with my thoughts. All right.
First tonight, we do have a big update in our dishonorable investigation, one that will impact murder convictions as well as judges, prosecutors, the county attorney, the state bar, and the upcoming election. If you don't remember, we exposed how this Maricopa County judge and her staff mocked and ridiculed people in court. We even proved it happened during major murder trials. And then, while under judicial investigation, that judge left the bench to take a job with the county attorney's office as a death penalty prosecutor, and allegations of misconduct didn't stop. We revealed all of that 2 years ago, and until now, there's been almost no accountability.
But as ABC 15 Chief Investigator Dave Biscopine is about to show you, our reporting just led to a major court ruling, and it's reigniting the scandal in a very big way.
This situation is already really messy, and it's about to get even worse. So first, let's give a quick, basic rundown of what's going on and how we got here. In February 2022, we launched Dishonorable, exposing the repeated misconduct in that judge's courtroom. In April 2023, lawyers in this first-degree murder case filed for post-conviction relief directly because of what we reported. Then in November 2023, they went further, saying the misconduct was so pervasive, the case could not be heard by any Maricopa County judge. And now, in May 2024, the court just agreed, ruling another county needs to take over the case. And experts say the court went a lot further than it needed to, laying out pages and pages of alleged misconduct. So what's next? Well, as you're about to see, a lot of drama and likely hearings where powerful people will have to take the stand and testify under oath. This was Erin Otis back when she was a judge, back when we uncovered nearly her entire court staff sharing those memes and emails. Some racist, some homophobic, some just cruel and insensitive.
But what's significant to the court is...
And some of those memes and emails sent during the death penalty trial of Victor Ted Hernandez. His case is why the court just issued this order, ruling another judge in another county will need to handle Hernandez's appeal.
Well, what stood out about it to me was that it was just a very solid legal ruling and legal analysis.
Amy Armstrong is an attorney who directs a nonprofit involved in death penalty cases.
I mean, really, do you think the court or the judge really had any other choice in order to kind of protect the integrity of the court itself?
I do not. I don't think the judge had any other choice.
As part of the ruling, Maricopa County's top presiding judge included 4 single-space pages that outline the misconduct and allegations involving Otis. Our reporting is specifically cited in the court's statement of facts, and the ruling calls the amount of alleged misconduct unprecedented and says this is an exceptionally rare situation. It also states Otis and other officials will likely have to testify.
So there's a chance, a real potential that Otis will have to take the stand and she'll have to really answer on the record under oath for what is alleged to have happened.
There's definitely a chance of that, and that's exactly why this ruling needed to be in order to protect everybody's rights and the integrity of the judiciary and public trust.
When it comes to alleged misconduct in the Hernandez case, there's more than just memes and emails. The court order includes other things we discovered, like allegations of inappropriate contact with defendants without lawyers present. Here's one example. After an oral argument in February 2019, Mr. Hernandez was left in the courtroom and Otis walked up and set a donut in front of him, encouraging him to eat it. She said, "I don't care if you killed 6 people. Everyone gets to eat their last meal."
This might just seem like one case and one sensationalistic example of things that can go awry, but it really is critical, the way that we handle these kinds of things for the stability of our democracy.
The Hernandez case and the court's new ruling also directly implicate the Maricopa County attorney, and that too is because of our reporting.
Well, David, you can try to portray that as me negotiating contract.
You're using the word negotiating. I'm not. You were discussing job opportunities with the sitting judge, and I'm surprised, I guess, that a division chief and now the sitting county attorney didn't think that perhaps raises some appearance of impropriety and being too close to the bench.
We uncovered text messages, and they show Otis was secretly talking with Rachel Mitchell about taking a job at MCAO while presiding over the Hernandez case. At the time, Mitchell was division chief, not yet the county attorney.
What I did was I informed her of what the new salary structure was because it
You didn't.
changed
That's
since
not.
she left.
That's not what the text message shows. You discuss specific jobs, bureau chief or capital. How do those sound to you? That's your text message.
I was simply giving her the salary structure, and the salary structure is dependent upon what jobs the person takes. So, no, I don't feel like anything was wrong in that.
Experts say in order to make its ruling, the court did not have to include all this information about the alleged misconduct or name names like Rachel Mitchell. But the court did. When we reached out to MCAO for comment, a spokesperson sent us this. It's the response they just filed in court. MCAO wants the court to vacate, reconsider, and issue a new order without all of that misconduct information. MCAO also aggressively defended Otis and Mitchell, saying the allegations are either false, inflammatory, or not sufficiently supported.
I just think this is another example. If you look at current events and you look at the crisis of confidence that the American public has in the U.S. Supreme Court right now, I think this is another example of why judicial integrity and transparency and accountability is so critical.
Integrity, transparency, and accountability. That's the focus of our next report on this ruling and scandal. That's because, in that order, the judge also wrote this about the unprecedented amount of alleged misconduct. Some, but not all, of these allegations have been addressed by the State Bar of Arizona and the Arizona Commission on Judicial Conduct. That line raises questions for the State Bar and the Judicial Commission. It's their job to investigate judges and attorneys. And in this case, as you'll see in our next report, there was very little discipline, and it's largely been hidden from the public. For now, I'm investigator Dave Biskobing, ABC 15, Arizona.
Thanks, Dave. And you can see that next report tomorrow night at 6. And as you know, no one stays on a story like Dave. If you want to see all of his reporting on the scandal, including a special hour-long documentary, just go to abc15.com/dishonorable.
All right. So for those of y'all who follow my channel pretty regularly, you know that I don't hold the media in the highest regard. Um, this was a good story. This is something that people needed to know, and you know what? Thank God that they were able to break that story. Now, the funny thing is, if you didn't catch it in the beginning, one person sentenced to death row was challenging or appealing his conviction based off of judicial and prosecutorial misconduct between uh, between this judge. This misconduct has been found to be so widespread that this chief judge has basically said that not only is a new trial warranted, but no judge in Maricopa County can oversee it. That is significant. And with, you know, man, Karen prosecutors, I'm telling you, she's sitting there shaking her head saying, no, we just talked about salary structure. And just in that brief text message, there wasn't anything in there about salary structure. And as an elected official, when you are in talks with somebody about bringing them over for a position, especially when that person has a conflict of interest, she's overseeing a death penalty case, and you're bringing her over to join your death penalty prosecution unit, preferably as a bureau chief or something like that, or a supervisor. You know, that's a huge conflict. That's a huge red flag. And regardless of how this shakes out, you're going to have civil rights attorneys all across the country flooding Maricopa County and flooding the state appellate courts and federal courts with allegations of civil rights violations. And all of these are going to have to be heard. There's going to have to be an investigation, because just like when a police officer gets involved in criminal activity, when that comes out, any case that they've ever been a part of is going to be reviewed to look and see if they can figure out where that misconduct started. And same thing with the judge, same thing with the prosecutor. Okay? You've got to figure out where all the bad started. You got to figure out how long it's been going on, how far it went, who knew about it. And it just creates a spider web type investigation where it kind of starts off in the center, but it just kind of seems to go out in all directions. This is the problem. You want to sit there and you want to tell police officers that they have to be held to a higher standard, but then judges and prosecutors, well, I don't know. Well, you know, you've got to understand they've got a different job, one thing or another. Yeah, because it's not like police officers have to make life or death decisions in an instant to decide the outcome of something. Yeah, you know, it must be really difficult. You know, you get to sit behind a desk, and you know, you've got, I don't know, 6 months to a year to completely review everything and decide how any other action under the sun would have been more appropriate than what the officer did. But more importantly, it shows the breakdown. All right. 2024, law enforcement has taken a beating over the last 5 to 10 years. And some of that has been well earned, and some of that hasn't been. The problem is that now people are starting to see where that disconnect is coming from. They're starting to see good officers are leaving law enforcement, and it's because of actions like this. Because when they do put in the work, when they do put in the time, and they do make sure that they try to make sure that everything they've done follows the letter and the spirit of the law, it's all for naught because some prosecutor or some judge ends up taking their case because of their own misconduct. Y'all, criminals have a green light right now. They really do. And the problem is it starts from the top down. First off, you've got to get rid of politicians who use their position to their advantage. And that doesn't matter if they're a senator, a congressperson, if they're any type of elected official. Maybe they just happen to be somebody in city, county government who have a title. All right. The law is the law, and there is nothing in there that is superseded because you have a title. All right. And watching things like this happen, it's no wonder that you're seeing law enforcement walk away. Good law enforcement officers walk away. The bad ones embed themselves like ticks, and there's really nothing you can do to get rid of them until something like this happens. And then there's an investigation. The DOJ comes in, takes over the department. They find wrongdoing, and they get rid of officers, or they get rid of bad prosecutors or bad judges. And the fix for this is simple. All right. Take it at the lowest level. Let's say somebody tries to say that an officer used inappropriate jurisdiction or discretion to not write a ticket. Somebody finds out about it. Well, I know for a fact that during the same time of day, not 15 minutes after I went through and got a ticket, my friend was stopped and she didn't get a ticket. Well, the only difference is she flirted her way out of the ticket, and that means that your officer is subject to being improperly influenced and is unprofessional and all these other things. So an investigation is started, and the supervisor looks at the video of the stop, and they see two completely different stops. The first stop, where the gentleman was stopped ahead, he's yelling and berating the officer, and he's making a complete jerk out of himself. And you're sitting there watching this officer sit there, nod his head, and he's polite, professional, and courteous throughout the entire thing. Even when this person is berating him, talking all kinds of trash about him, the officer is everything you'd expect him to do. Now, 15 minutes later, he stops this other vehicle. It happens to be a friend of the first vehicle. But this young lady, she's polite. She says she's sorry. She stops immediately. She's got her driver's license, proof of insurance ready to go. She has she has a good driving record. And let's say they were both stopped for doing 11 over. All right, keep it simple. 11 over. All right. I think we could all, especially if you've ever done traffic stops or traffic enforcement, you could probably say 11 over is a good place to start stopping people on a busy thoroughfare. Obviously lower speed limits, lower tolerances, but the two traffic stops are completely different because of the behavior and the demeanor of the drivers. All right. The driver's attitude had a lot to do with the outcome of the traffic stop. Okay. So is that preferential treatment? Yeah. Is that discretion? Yeah. But how the officer was treated directly affected that. And I'm sure the officer would be able to articulate, well, he was a jerk and she was nice. So he got a ticket, she got a warning. Both issues were addressed in accordance with training, policy, law, and that's it. You can't sit there and say, well, people just need to go to their mutual corners and everybody just needs to take a breath and cool off. You don't get to say that when you have a definable, articulable violation of policy or violation of the law. That doesn't go away just because you have a title. It doesn't go away just because, somebody had a bad day. All right. Violations of policy, violations of law, those need to be investigated. If there's no violation of law, no violation of policy, the investigation's done. Whether it's a complaint, whether it's a criminal case, what have you. If you can't articulate what the violation of policy or violation of law was, and I'm sorry, but somebody got their feelings hurt is not a violation of policy. Certainly not a violation of law. All right. So, y'all, that's kind of my take on Sandra Dorley and some issues within the criminal justice system itself. And really, the only way I see those things getting better is when the citizens of these jurisdictions start to see that nobody's above the law. And when people do slip up, if it's a policy violation, if it's a legal violation, they're held accountable I can't think of the word, appropriately to the violation. Okay. So just something to kind of think about. And y'all, this is Derek Judd, the Cowboy Criminologist with Cowboy Criminology. I want to thank y'all for joining me again. Please like, share, and subscribe on your favorite social media platforms, and I'll see you next time.